This is Mac OS Ken.
Recapping last week's earnings call and a slew of raised price targets. It's Monday, the 3rd of May, 2021. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Upstart. Fair and fast personal loans. Learn more and check your rate at upstart.com/macosken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Wednesday afternoon, right after the earnings call, I got my second COVID-19 vaccine, and that was me done for 2.5 days. A few days late, we are going to do the earnings call today, plus a little earnings aftermath. Last Wednesday, Apple CEO Tim Cook and Apple CFO Luca Maestri opened up the party line for analysts, and what a party it was. Growth in records and all-time highs and March highs. Let's go through the call. In what he sees as a combo of how important Apple products have been through #these times in which we live and consumer belief in a brighter tomorrow, Cook said the company set new March quarter records in every geo tracked, broadly distributed across product categories. The company also saw all-time records set for services and the Mac, with March quarter records set for iPhone and the much-encompassing category wearables, home, and accessories. Putting numbers to some of Cook's fun without numbers was CFO Maestri. According to Mr. Money, revenue came in at a March quarter record-breaking $89.6 billion. That's 54%, or $31 billion higher than the same quarter a year earlier. The company saw strong double-digit growth for each of its product categories, with a shout-out from the CFO for all-time records for the Mac and services, and March quarter records for iPhone, as well as the wearables, home, and accessories category. The company also set new March quarter records in every geography, with growth of at least 35% in each one. Products revenue came in at $72.7 billion, a March quarter record, up 62% from the same quarter a year earlier. CFO Maestri said the installed base of active devices reached a new all-time record in each of the company's major product categories. Breaking it down a bit, Apple CEO said iPhone grew 66% year over year. That's the March quarter of 2021 versus the March quarter of 2020. Revenue for the category was $47.9 billion, according to CFO Maestri. That represented a March quarter record, driven by strong double-digit growth in every geographic region. Not surprisingly, iPhone's active installed base is now at a new all-time high. CEO Cook says the iPhone 12 line is going gangbusters thanks to its rough-and-tumble ceramic shield, its unmatched camera system, and, of course, 5G. Here in the States, CFO Maestri says customer satisfaction for the entire iPhone 12 family stands at a staggering 99%. Actually, over 99%, according to the CFO. Mac and iPad have had a huge year, thanks to all the working from home and schooling at home driven by the pandemic. CEO Cook said that pushed iPad to strong double-digit growth and its highest March quarter revenue in nearly a decade. That was revenue of $7.8 billion, up 79% from the same quarter a year ago. The Mac tablet netbook thingy set a March quarter record for the Asia-Pacific region, except in Japan, where it set an all-time quarterly record. The Mac, meanwhile, set an all-time revenue record of $9.1 billion, driven, according to Apple CEO, by the adoption of Apple Silicon M1. Apple CFO said the Mac saw its best all-time revenues in Europe and the rest of Asia-Pacific, while setting March quarter records in the Americas, Greater China, and Japan. According to Cook, the last 3 quarters were the best 3 quarters ever for the Mac. One more thing from Apple's CFO. He said about half the people buying Macs and iPads last quarter were new to their respective products. We used to hear that all the time. It is interesting to hear it again. The wearables, home, and accessories category grew 25% year over year, coming in with March quarter record revenue of $7.8 billion. Apple CEO said the category set March quarter records in every geography, driven largely by Apple Watch Series 6 and Apple Watch SE. According to CFO Maestri, 75% of people buying Apple Watch in the March quarter were buying Apple Watch for the first time. The company looks forward to continued wearables, home, and accessories momentum with the recently announced Apple TV 4K and the just-released AirTag. That was 2 days in the world's future during the earnings call. 3 days now are past as of this recording. Services grew 27% year over year, hitting $16.9 billion for the March quarter. Once again, Apple said that category set records in each of its geographic segments, while CFO Maestri said records were set in most service categories. Execs are stoked with the performance of established services like Apple Music and Apple News. They're also stoked over new services like Apple Card Family and upcoming subscriptions through Apple Podcasts. CFO Maestri said services are being well served by the growth of Apple's active installed base, by record high transacting and paid accounts, and by paid subscriptions. Paid subscriptions were up 40 million from the December quarter to the March quarter. The company now counts 660 million paid subscriptions, according to the CFO. Apple CEO also made mention of stuff in the Apple services ecosystem that you can't buy, like the tight integration of hardware, software, and services, plus the steps Apple's taking for consumer privacy, like App Store privacy labels and app tracking transparency, launched last week with iOS 14.5 and other OS updates. Plus, have you heard about Ted Lasso, Apple TV Plus, and Ted Lasso? I kid about Ted Lasso, mostly because I love it, and I love the attention Apple pays to it. More than once, Apple CEO mentioned the company's upcoming content partnership with Malala Yousafzai. He also mentioned the BBC Apple TV Plus documentary, The Year the Earth Changed. According to Cook, the telling of such stories is just one example of how Apple lives its values and operationalizes the idea that to whom much is given, much is expected. That did, of course, give the CEO a chance to shout out some of Apple's environmental plans, like having Apple's whole supply chain be net carbon zero by 2030. That's leading to other companies and manufacturers following suit, according to Cook. He also acknowledged work Apple's doing with and for underserved communities, including a Green Impact Accelerator here in the U.S., investing in and supporting minority-owned businesses at the forefront of environmental fields, as well as the company's first entrepreneur camp for Black founders and developers. Then a message for shareholders, for citizenry, and you gotta figure for the U.S. Congress. Quoting CEO Cook, "We were proud to announce that we have expanded and accelerated our commitment to the U.S. economy. Over the next 5 years, we will invest $430 billion, creating 20,000 jobs in the process. The investments will support American innovation and drive economic benefits in every state, including a new North Carolina campus and job-creating investments in innovative fields like silicon engineering and 5G technology." Looking ahead on the financial side, CFO Maestri said Apple expects June quarter revenue to grow strong double digits year over year. That said, the sequential revenue drop from the end of the March quarter to the end of the current quarter will be bigger than in years past for a couple of reasons. First, strong demand plus later than usual launch meant that the iPhone 12 family only hit supply-demand balance in the March quarter. That'll mean a steeper sequential decline than usual, according to the CFO. And second, Apple believes supply constraints will have a revenue impact of $3 to $4 billion in the June quarter. Heading towards the Q&A, Cook wrapped his prepared comments with a warning about being overly optimistic. Yes, we want to go ahead to something like the before times. But new variants are driving other parts of the planet back inside as the pandemic rages on. That said, Apple is working to keep people healthy, both people who work for the company and the public at large, with features like easily locating vaccination sites in the States through Apple Maps. Our work's not done, said Apple's CEO. But as I said a year ago, while we can't say for sure how many chapters are in this book, we can have confidence that the ending will be a good one. With that, the call was turned over to analysts for a bit of Q&A. We'll get to that in a moment, plus some higher targets post-call, but first a word from Upstart. Fair and fast personal loans. Paying off debt can feel like an uphill battle. High interest rates plus minimum monthly payments keep people in an endless cycle of debt. Upstart can help. Whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high-interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 500,000 people have used Upstart to get a simple, fixed monthly payment. Upstart looks at more than just your credit score, factoring in income and employment history. That lets them offer smarter rates with trusted partners. With a 5-minute online rate check, you can see your rate up front for loans between $1,000 to $50,000, and you can receive funds as fast as 1 business day after accepting your loan. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/macOSKen. UPSTART. That's upstart.com/macOSKen. Don't forget to use my URL to let them know that I sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/macOSKen. Right. Time now for the Q&A. Shannon Cross of Cross Research wanted to know what Apple was thinking about refreshing the installed base and attracting new customers. CEO Cook pointed back to the big numbers, no whammies for iPhone last quarter. He also pointed out that while 5G is huge in China and growing nicely in the US, there are plenty of parts of the planet that are just getting into the 5G game. As they come online, they'll get the fever for the flavor of an iPhone 5G. Similar to the Cross question, Morgan Stanley analyst Katie Huberty wondered how sustainable the current trends are. CEO Cook seemed to say the demand for iPad and Mac would keep looking good for a while, partly because of continued work from home, learning at home trends, and partly because they currently can't keep up with demand. While Apple Watch is going gangbusters, the category is still in early innings as far as he's concerned. Services are still going crazy, and the company feels good about the direction. While many have said the semiconductor shortage would not be as hard on Apple as other manufacturers, B of A Merrill Lynch analyst Wamsi Mohan got CFO Maestri to say that hurt is coming. Asked about the rougher sequential decline between last quarter and this one, Maestri again pointed to the late meeting of supply and demand for iPhone 12. He also mentioned the supply constraints that will have a revenue impact of $3 to $4 billion in the June quarter. This time he said that those constraints will come from the global semiconductor shortage. Cowen and Company analyst Krish Sankar wondered what made things so great for Greater China last quarter. CEO Cook pointed out that China went into lockdown earlier in 2020 than did other regions. They spent the March quarter of 2020 not spending money on things. That makes the comparison to the March quarter of 2021 favorable. Also, iPhone 12 is crushing it. Mac and iPad are crushing it. In fact, 2/3 of Mac and iPad buyers in China last quarter were new to the respective platforms. Sankar also asked about regulatory risk going forward and whether more public disclosure would be helpful. Apple CEO said they simply have to tell their story, why Apple does what it does. They'll also keep an ear to the ground and change what needs to be changed. Finally, UBS analyst David Vogt wanted to know about industry reaction to app tracking transparency. Surprising no one, Apple's CEO focused on the user reaction, not industry reaction. Feedback from users has been tremendous, according to the CEO. Now that's just a sample of the questions asked and the answers given. If you'd like to hear more, you can catch a replay of the call on Apple's Investor Relations page. It's also available as a podcast. Act fast, though. It'll only be up for about 9 more days. If you're more of a reader, mad props to the good people at iMore. They have posted a transcript of the call, CEO, CFO, Q&A, and all. Now, it'll likely come as no surprise, a number of analysts upped their price targets on Apple shares in the wake of March numbers. Philip Elmerdowitz, Apple 3.0, posted parts of those missives. Morgan Stanley analyst Katie Huberty was turned on by the records set. Quoting her note, even with guidance implying weaker than normal iPhone seasonality and a $3 to $4 billion hit from component constraints for iPad and Mac, Street estimate for $69 billion of June quarter revenue needs to come up by $2 to $5 billion based on our analysis. She's got an overweight rating on Apple shares. She boosted her price target on the shares from $158 to $161. JP Morgan's Samik Chatterjee is ga over iPhone's position in 5G devices. He's got an overweight rating on Apple shares. He upped his price target on the shares from $150 to $165. Jefferies analyst Kyle McNeely thinks the street underappreciates how Apple's positioned to benefit from the 5G product cycle underway. He's got a buy rating on Apple shares. He upped his price target from $160 to $175. Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives was Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives. He's got an outperform rating on Apple shares. He upped his price target from $175 to $185. B of A Merrill Lynch analyst Wamsi Mohan likes what he heard, though he is worried about the tough compare this year sets up for next year. He's got a neutral rating on Apple shares, though he upped his target from $155 to $160. Canaccord Genuity analyst T. Michael Walkley upped his target from $155 to $165. He stuck with his buy rating. Deutsche Bank's Sidney Ho moved from $160 to $165 with a buy rating. R.W. Baird analyst William Power went from $155 to $160 with an outperform. Raymond James analyst Chris Casso moves from $160 to $185 with an outperform. Citi analyst Gentleman Jim Suva goes from $150 to $170 with a buy rating. UBS analyst David Vogt takes his target from $142 to $155 with a buy rating. And oh my goodness, will somebody please kill the fatted calf? Goldman Sachs analyst Rod Hall is halfway home. Quoting his note, "We are upgrading our rating from sell to neutral after Apple posted another large beat and implied a raise versus our June revenue expectations. Our original view that the iPhone cycle would disappoint in the midst of COVID was clearly wrong. Not only has Apple done better than we expected on iPhone during the cycle, but Mac and iPad have also materially outperformed our forecasts." As I say, he is only halfway home. He's worried about the tough time Apple said it'll have meeting Mac and iPad demand this quarter. With this kind of demand backlog and a very difficult reopening forecasting environment, Hall says he and his are moving to the sidelines here. Well, at least they're not in the parking lot anymore. As the note indicated, he has moved his rating from sell to neutral. He also upped his price target on Apple from $83 to $130. Apple starts trading today at $131.46. Coming up in a few minutes, it's just you and me today. We'll talk about the shot that knocked me down, plus a little grousing about changes to Apple Podcasts. It's all coming up in a few minutes or a couple of hours. Seems to depend. Look for it and listen wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Upstart. Fair and fast personal loans. Learn more and check your rate at upstart.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.